Vancouver had seen gunfire before, but not like this. A nightclub filled with flashing lights, a man at the center of every rumor, and one pull of a trigger that rewrote Canadian crime forever. He ruled the streets by turning loyalty into a business. But loyalty can be rented only once. This wasn't a rival hit. No drug feud. No gang ambush. The bullet came from his own circle. Men who called him brother one week and ghosted his number the next. When the shot hit, even the music seemed to freeze. Glass fell. Bodies dropped, not from bullets, but from disbelief. The killer didn't run. He walked through the crowd, calm as if he were leaving a business meeting. Minutes later, police entered through the same doors, finding 300 witnesses and not one person willing to speak. The man lying face down under the strobe lights was Bhupinder Singh Johal, the gangster who made Vancouver fear him, and in the end, feared no one enough. They called him untouchable. That night proved otherwise. Missed the button? Go ahead, subscribe now so you don't forget later. Because what happens next isn't the story of a murder. It's the story of a man who made fear his empire and paid for it with silence. He walked into public view like a star, luxury sports car, designer suit, TV cameras waiting. He wasn't hiding in the shadows. His name, Bhupinder Singh Johal. You'd call him a gangster, but he called himself a brand. He turned television interviews into threat scenes. In one broadcast, he leaned toward the camera and said, "Just want these guys to know, you got another thing coming. I'm still around." No mask, no code words, just defiance, live on air. The studio fell silent. What reporters whispered afterward felt less like an interview and more like a declaration of war. Headlines screamed across British Columbia. Dawn from Punjab, Vancouver's celebrity criminal, Indo-Canadian kingpin. But for all the fame and chaos, no one asked the real question: why did he want the spotlight? What drives a man to turn crime into theater? To taunt police instead of hiding from them? The answer started long before the cameras. 4 years old, fresh from Punjab, his family landing in Vancouver, looking for peace. School records would later describe him as violent, ungovernable. He didn't start fights to win. He started them to be seen. Expelled in 1989 after kicking his vice principal so hard the man was hospitalized. 60 days in jail at age 18. Jail didn't humble him, it hardened him. By his early 20s, he joined a crew of dealers called Los Diablos, later renamed the Punjabi Mafia. The operation started local, but Johal had bigger plans. Hijack trucks at the port of Vancouver. Millions moving quietly through warehouses under his watch. He made violence look organized and organized crime look glamorous. At clubs, people stopped talking when he walked in. At court, they stopped testifying. But here's the paradox. For a man surrounded by crowds, he trusted no one. So what was it really? Power? Pride? Or a wound he never stopped picking? Because behind every smirk was paranoia. Behind every interview was bait. The loop had already begun. Public taunts. Open mockery of rival crews. TV soundbites daring them to try. Every word became a challenge. Every camera flash, a countdown. The city called him fearless. The police called him dangerous. But those who truly knew him said the same thing in hushed tones. He's asking for it. Question is, when the inevitable came, who among them would be brave enough to pull the trigger? But first, how a bright boy from Punjab became the man who made Vancouver tremble. He wasn't born into violence. He learned it. Punjab, India, a Jat Sikh family. His father a factory worker, his mother quiet but stern. When he was 4, they packed their lives into 2 suitcases and boarded a plane for Canada. Vancouver looked peaceful from above. Blue ocean, green mountains. On the ground, isolation, language barriers, and the slow burn of being treated like an outsider. The Johal family settled in East Vancouver. Rent was cheap. So was respect. His parents split not long after. His mother took 2 jobs and raised him alone. Teachers later said she begged the school to help keep him straight. By age 10, The warning signs were already there. He fought older kids and never backed down. He didn't just want to win, he wanted people to remember him. By 13, the anger had shape. By 16, it had purpose. Teachers described him as intelligent, manipulative, defiant. Then came the wound he never forgot. After the assassination of Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, Sikhs across Canada became targets. Someone cut young Bindy's hair, an attack not on his body, but his faith. For him, it wasn't humiliation, it was transformation. That single act created a divide in his mind, us versus them. His principal once said he had the eyes of someone who would rather destroy a system than obey it. In 1989, that prediction came true. 17 years old. He's called to the office for a lecture on discipline. The vice principal warns him about his gang attitude. Bindy laughs, then kicks the man so hard he collapses. Hospital, charges, expulsion, 60 days in jail. The first taste of confinement for someone who hated control. Inside, he studied people, how they spoke, what they feared, who held power. When he got out, he didn't want an education, he wanted authority. The streets became his classroom. He started with petty crimes. Credit card scams, stolen electronics. But Vancouver's underworld was changing fast. Drugs, guns, and new faces with old grudges. That's where he met the Dosage brothers, Ron and Jimmy. Ron was quiet, calculating. Jimmy, reckless muscle. Together, they ran Los Diablos, a Hispanic-born crew turned multi-ethnic drug syndicate. Bindy was a newcomer with something no one else had, boldness. He didn't wait his turn, he created one. Under the Dosage brothers, he learned how product moved through the port, how shipments were taxed, who paid, who disappeared when they didn't. But apprenticeship has a limit. Within a year, he was making side deals behind their backs. The cops started hearing his name. The streets started saying it in whispers. He built a reputation on fear, not from what he did, but from what people thought he might do. By his early 20s, he'd outgrown his mentors, and he wanted his own empire. The Dosage brothers didn't realize it yet, but they were training the man who'd eventually erase them. That's the thing about Bindy Johal. Every lesson someone gave him, he used against them. He studied loyalty like a business transaction, believed trust was for the weak, and betrayal was just good strategy. Within 2 years, he controlled multiple distribution points across British Columbia. Police estimated he was pulling in over $4 million a year, not counting extortion. But there was another number that haunted investigators: the rising body count. His crew, now calling themselves the elite, became executioners on call. 5 Indo-Canadian hitmen, armed and loyal only to money. Over the next 5 years, they'd be linked to at least 25 murders. Every killing looked different, but the message was always the same: cross him and vanish. Detectives later said he was both calculating and impulsive. He could plan a deal for months, then kill a man over a single insult. He didn't want respect. He wanted control. Total, unquestioned control. And if power was the addiction, paranoia was the side effect. He started carrying 2 pagers, 3 guns, 5 alibis, changed phones weekly, 8 from sealed containers prepared only by his mother. For Bindy Johal, fear wasn't the enemy, it was the currency. Every rumor added interest. Every headline grew his legend. But legends have a rule: the higher they rise, the fewer people left to trust. And when there's no one left, the next bullet usually comes from within. When Jimmy Dosage, once his mentor, was jailed for murder, Bindy didn't hesitate. He stepped in, took the throne, and seized control of the Punjabi mafia. Overnight, loyalty vanished. Fear became the new currency. To enforce his rule, he created the elite, 5 Indo-Canadian hitmen who answered only to him. Vancouver's underworld cracked under the pressure. The Lotus Triads, the United Nations Gang, the Wolfpack Alliance, each one watching, waiting for Bindy Johal to make a single mistake. October 25, 1996. That mistake arrived. but not from him. A small-time dealer named Randy Chan sold him a batch of diluted cocaine. In most gangs, that earns a warning. In Bindy's world, it earned a kidnapping. Chan was stuffed into a car trunk and held for 56 hours. The ransom: 5 kilos of pure product, or $500,000. 70 officers hit the streets, helicopters overhead, roadblocks through the night. When the Lotus Triads finally paid up, Chan was released, bruised, half-starved, alive only because his ransom cleared. The Vancouver press called it an act of terror in broad daylight. Bindy called it business. Days later, he was back in public. Nightclubs, gins, TV interviews, acting untouchable. Every word fed his legend. Every flash of a camera painted a brighter target on his back. He trusted no one, not his friends, not his family, not even the men paid to protect him. Makes you wonder, how long would you last in his world? If you're still watching, don't blink. The next move decides who dies first. He changed phones weekly, switched cars nightly, ate only food his mother touched. He said paranoia kept him alive. What he didn't realize, it was already killing him. Because somewhere inside the empire he built on fear, one of his own men was waiting for permission to pull the trigger. The streets of Vancouver had seen violence before, but never betrayal like this. It started with a price tag, $230,000. Jimmy Dosage, once Bindy Johal's mentor, offered it to a hitman to end his former protege. But the hitman flipped. Bindy offered him double. The hunter became the hunted. Jimmy Dosage was found on the pavement, shot dead before he ever saw the barrel. Days later, Bindy appeared on live television, smiling. He couldn't fight his way out of a paper bag. No remorse, just amusement. That single line, broadcast across Canada, turned Bindy Johal from a gangster into a ghost story parents whispered to their kids. Weeks later, Ron Dosage was caught at a red light. A black sedan pulled up beside him. An AK-47 opened fire, 23 rounds through the driver's side. The windshield shattered. His face was gone before his foot left the brake. The car rolled forward through the intersection, silent except for the sound of a horn that wouldn't stop. Vancouver froze. 2 gang leaders dead. One name on everyone's lips: Bindy. Drive-bys followed. Retaliation hits. Innocents caught in the crossfire. Like Greg Olson, a bystander shot outside his own home in a case of mistaken identity. Police locked down parts of Surrey and Burnaby. Helicopters, raids, checkpoints. Nothing slowed him down. Every news channel called it the Punjabi gang war. But to Bindy, it wasn't war. It was personal. The press called him Canada's most dangerous man. He called it good marketing. Yet even he couldn't outsmart the one system he didn't control: the courts. Within months, detectives built their case: wiretaps, phone logs, witness statements. Bindy Johal was charged with both Dosage murders. The trial became one of the most expensive in Canadian history. The evidence was overwhelming, until something unprecedented happened inside that courtroom. Peter Gill, Bindy's co-accused, started a secret affair with juror Gillian Guess. Late-night phone calls, hotel meetings, notes passed during deliberations. The story broke like a bomb. Canada's first juror-defendant relationship scandal. The courtroom turned into a circus. The judge called it a stain on justice, but the damage was done. On the day of the verdict, the world watched a man they thought was untouchable walk free. Not guilty. Gillian Guess would later be convicted of obstruction of justice, but by then, Bindy was already celebrating on the front page. Cameras flashed. Crowds cheered. He grinned, stepped out of the courthouse, and said only one thing: "Told you they couldn't hold me." And that line, more than any bullet or betrayal, changed him overnight. He became the face of untouchable crime in Canada. But every victory comes with an echo, and every echo leads back to silence. Question is, how long can a man live when even the law gives up on stopping him? Because the next time Bindy Johal would stand in front of flashing lights, it wouldn't be for cameras. it would be under them. The verdict made him a star. But fame doesn't buy loyalty. The court doors closed. And Bindy Johal walked back into a world already turning on him. For him, the war wasn't over. It had just gone quiet. Vancouver's body count started climbing again, and every name had one connection. Singh Johal, shot outside a community center. He used to run errands for Bindy. Rumor was he talked too much. Kun Singh, childhood friend, killed after Bindy accused him of hiding money. Venus News Mackenzie, a woman caught between Bindy and another man. Her murder wasn't business, it was jealousy. Derek Shankar mocked him during a club argument, called him a baby, shot twice the same night. Danny Mann, a loyal soldier who said he wanted out. Bindy's response? Blame it on the HA. One by one, the men who built his empire began vanishing. Police called it paranoia. His men called it cleaning house. But to the people who knew him best, it looked like something else entirely. The collapse of a man who no longer trusted his own shadow. He started sleeping with 2 guns under his pillow, switched hotels nightly, told friends he felt a bullet every time someone knocked. The fear that once protected him had become his executioner. By late 1998, the police had lost track of how many funerals they'd linked back to Johal. Every murder scene the same. Shell casings scattered, witnesses silent, no fingerprints, no cameras. Investigators nicknamed it the ghost pattern. December 1998. Surveillance teams noted his movements getting reckless, expensive suits, late-night clubs, same routes every week. For a man obsessed with control, he was slipping. Then came the whispers. His own inner circle was planning something. He laughed it off. If they're coming, he told a friend, they better not miss. The police would later call that sentence prophetic, because within weeks, the prophecy fulfilled itself. On the floor of a nightclub, filled with 300 people, Operation White Tiger launched within hours of his death. $2.5 million in drugs seized, 15 firearms recovered, encrypted phones and financial records traced to over a dozen shell companies. The empire, Bindy built on fear, was now being dismantled by men who feared no one. But even in death, he didn't vanish. The Indo-Canadian underworld splintered, new crews rising from the ashes of his name. The independent soldiers, men who once carried his orders, now carrying his legend instead. To them, he wasn't a criminal. He was the template, a reminder that in Vancouver, power wasn't taken, it was inherited. You're still here? Do what you meant to do earlier, subscribe. Because the story doesn't end with his death. It ends with what came after, a generation raised on his image, chasing the same power that destroyed him. He was bright, charismatic, violent, a man who could light up a room or empty it, depending on which side of his smile you stood. To police, he was a criminal genius. To rivals, a storm they couldn't predict. But to some young Indo-Canadians, he was something entirely different. A symbol that brown men could no longer be overlooked, that fear could speak their language too. For a generation that felt invisible, Bindy Johal made headlines that said otherwise. Yet the truth was far colder. He didn't fight racism, he fed on it. Every insult became justification. Every slight became permission. He convinced a generation that power meant violence, that respect came through terror. And when he looked in the mirror, he didn't see a criminal. He saw justice, wearing his own face. The irony? He died the very way he lived, surrounded by people and completely alone. Fear had made him untouchable. But fear doesn't protect you forever. It just delays the moment it turns back around. They say the Palladium floor was still sticky with champagne and blood the next morning, the lights still flickering. To some, that was the end of a villain. To others, the birth of a legend. But between those two myths lies the truth. He built his empire on fear and died dancing in it. So the question isn't how he lived. It's why so many wanted to live like him. Maybe it wasn't power they admired. Maybe it was defiance. Because in a city that told him he'd never matter, he made them remember his name. Bhupinder Bindy Singh Johal, the man who proved fear has a price, and nobody leaves the game owing nothing. And if you made it this far, you know what to do. Subscribe, hit the bell. There are more cases like this coming. Cases where the truth is darker than any fiction.